On Roadkill Garage, it is all win. We got a 6-speed manual trans, we got my home-built COVID 350, and we got 56 Chevy, and
it's all glory down the track. Boom.
Our 1956 Chevy has a long history on Motor Trend shows. It started out on Hot Rod Garage, where Tony and Lucky bought this 56 Chevy that had been an NHRA national record holder and stock eliminator way back in the day. But it was super rusty and super clapped out, so they bought another chassis, and tech setter Kalen sandblasted it and restored it and made it mint. And then they plopped their hideous body back on it and went to the drag strip, and it was super slow. Now, after that, on Roadkill Garage, me and Dulcich ended up doing a body swap. I had bought this 56 body a long time ago, and you may have even seen it in Roadkill Garage episodes because it rotted in front of the shop here forever. But this body is truly mint. So we did that body swap, and then we took it to the Kingman Street Drags in Arizona, where it was hideously slow and had a horrible wheel hop problem. So we're here to fix all those things on this episode of Roadkill Garage. First of all, we're going to install the COVID 350, which is a small block I built using leftover parts in my garage on an episode of Roadkill that was sort of a working from home deal. That engine ended up making 500 horsepower on the engine dyno, and you'll also see it on Engine Masters. Next up, we're going to install an American Powertrain 6-speed manual transmission, and then we have to fix the wheel hop problem, which I think is going to involve cutting the spring perches off the rear end and adjusting the pinion angle. So we got a lot to do, and this time, it's 4 days. We're hoping to go to the drag strip on Friday morning. But even if that doesn't happen, this car is going to be amazing. It's time to turn the 56 into a hot rod.
It already is a hot rod, but it just needs to be a fast one.
I'm prepared to ruin this with a 500 horsepower small block. The COVID 350 is coming in. What do you want to do first?
Well, I could do the front stuff. I say we take the front clip off and then try to extract that 265.
Okay.
Let's do it.
I'm ready. Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
That's a breeze.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're basically taking a nice, cool running, driving car and making it a rattle trap.
Yeah, a fast one, though.
Towards me now?
Yeah. I like the 265 and the 3-speed.
Now you tell me.
I know.
No, I do too. We're really going to change the character of this car a lot. It was just like a sweet cruiser before, and now it's going to be all violent and hot rod style.
Yeah, I have to admit that when we were at the street drags, it almost felt like a little inadequate. And you really don't want to go to the street drags in Kingman, Arizona with inadequacy issues. You want to be bold and competent with a 505 horsepower engine, right?
This is the so-called COVID 350. I assembled this with mostly used parts I had sitting around my garage. So here's what it is. Basic 350 Chevy, 30 thousandths overbore, so it's 355 cubic inches. It does have forged pistons for 11.25 to 1 compression ratio. One of the secrets to power is the Blueprint engine's 210cc CNC ported cylinder heads. It has a solid roller cam. Comp cam's 242, 248 at 50. And with the rocker arms that I've got on here, it does have 600 lift. But we ended up testing it on the dyno for episodes that you'll see of Engine Masters using an Edelbrock Super Victor intake and a 750 Holly. And it made 446 pound-feet of torque at 5,200 RPM and 502 horsepower at 6,600 RPM. So it's going to be pretty cool for this thing, especially with the stick. $7 grand.
Right now, we're waiting for parts, so there's no actual work happening on the 56 Chevy. But there's this big, ugly dent in the quarter panel that's been bothering me for a long time, so I decided to try to do something about it. I've got this suction cup dent puller that I've never actually used. This is going to be the secret to pulling this dent out. That didn't do much. This is kind of textured, so I don't know if I'm getting a perfect feel. Oh, that is no suction. What this is going to come down to is basically the force of the suction cup. It's got to be great enough to pull the dent. So I wet it down with a little bit of glass cleaner to provide a seal. And as you can hear, I have the air compressor running for more air pressure. If we were working on a late model car, that would come out right now. But the metal on this car is really thick. Okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it with this. So I'm going to move on to plan B. For my next attempt here, I'm going to use a principle that I learned from the ancient Greek philosopher and mathematician Archimedes, and that's the principle of leverage. I've got a 2x4 tucked up in the quarter panel, and I've got this jack handle, and I should be able to exert a tremendous amount of force on this quarter panel and thereby pop that dent right out. It's definitely moving it. I have to give Archimedes some credit there, but it seems like it just wants to flex. If I reposition my wood, I think it's getting better. I don't want to hurt myself here. Whoa! I think something's actually happened. Whoa! Oh, there goes the GoPro. I don't care. I'm getting the dent out. But actually, it's a lot better.
Wow. That was an annoying dent, and now it's virtually camouflaged. You can't even tell.
I could hardly live with it, honestly.
It was pretty terrible. Okay, I think it's good.
If you're happy,
Great.
I'm happy.
Thanks, Dolchek.
Okay.
Parts are here. I think we need to move on to motor mounts.
Lunch.
Oh, lunch. Let's procrastinate more. Parts have arrived. So the first thing I'm going to do is install some motor mount brackets so we can locate the engine so that we can figure out where the transmission cross member goes. Now, on the 55 to 57 Chevy, they came stock with a front motor mount setup. Unfortunately, they're just way too flimsy for the kind of power that we're making, so I'm going to convert it to side mounts. These are brackets right here that are made by a company called Classic Performance, or CPP, to convert to the conventional muscle car style side mount. So to install them, I'm just going to have to knock out some rivets and drill some holes. The other thing to know is that you can get these in either stock location or 3/4 of an inch forward, and I chose 3/4 forward just to give me a little bit more bell housing and distributor clearance. Yes, we are gonna put a stick in it. So you remember American Powertrain is the company that helped me put a 5-speed in my Mach 1 called the Disgusting? Well, the same company is dialing me in this time, except this is a 6-speed. This is a Tremec T56 Magnum. It's very similar to what you would find in modern muscle cars when they come with a 6-speed. This thing is trick because first gear ratio is 2.66 to 1. The sixth gear ratio, and fifth and sixth are both overdrive. Sixth gear is 0.63 to 1. That means the 56 Chevy with a 411 rear gear and 27-inch tall tires is going to cruise 75 miles an hour at 2,400 RPM, which makes it mint. I love these transmissions. I've had them before in cars. They just shift sweet. They make the car. So now, let's talk about the American Powertrain kit. First of all, comes with a transmission, comes with the shift plate set up for where it needs to fall in your tunnel, comes with a stick, which in this case is aluminum with a really cool ball, and it comes with a center force clutch and a QuickTime bell housing to mate up to your engine. We have a flywheel from them, but unfortunately I messed something up, so I'm going to explain that to you, what I'm going to do there later. You'll also get a custom cross member that'll bolt right into your car, the yoke, and a hydraulic throwout bearing kit. So as you can see, I'm super excited about this, and the installation of it is going to begin with installing a flywheel on here and then the bell housing. The American Powertrain kit comes with a flywheel, but I had told them that I had an engine with a one-piece rear main seal, the later model small block Chevy. This is actually a two-piece rear main seal. I switched up what engine I was going to use. Those two engines, one-piece versus two-piece, takes a different flywheel bolt pattern. This is going to be rad and experimental for me. I got an aluminum flywheel. Check that out. So normally your flywheel would be steel. Normally it would weigh about 30 pounds. This is a billet aluminum flywheel. This thing weighs 15 pounds. So what are the pros and cons of that? With a heavier flywheel, you have more stored inertia, so that when you bring up the RPM and dump the clutch, you've got a lot more stored energy to launch the car. With an aluminum flywheel, you have less of that stored energy. And if you've got something that doesn't make a lot of torque or doesn't have a lot of rear gear ratio, meaning not a very deep rear gear, or something that is really heavy, an aluminum flywheel might be a bad idea. But since I have a light car, 411s, a stick, and a decently powerful engine, I'm gonna try this. So what would be the advantage of an aluminum flywheel? It's so much lighter that it's gonna help the engine RPM faster. It is less parasitic loss because of the sheer inertial weight of the thing. So I've never done this before. We're gonna see what happens, but I'm digging it. So what we're dealing with here is a center force dual friction clutch. Center force has got this special design where it's a diaphragm type clutch and it's got these weights on it that the concept behind them is the higher the RPM, the more these weights add load to the clutch so that it doesn't slip.
The next thing we have to do here is bolt the bell housing to the back of the block. I might have that upside down. Now, if you heard all that racket, that thing knocking around, that is why it's called a bell housing.
The next thing we're doing here is setting up our hydraulic throwout bearing, which is an American powertrain Hydramax. They do take some setup. You gotta measure the distance from the clutch fingers to this surface right here, and then from this surface to here, and make sure that you've got some gap in there so that this isn't just riding on the fingers all the time, so it doesn't heat up and swell and make the clutch release a little bit, and so that it doesn't have too much spacing in it. It's the same as setting up the gap on a mechanical linkage setup. So the way that this bearing works is almost like how a brake caliper squeezes, except for this spreads. So this is the hose with hydraulic fluid going in from the master cylinder that is on the clutch pedal. This is the bleed line, and when you step on the clutch pedal, it makes pressure and expands that throwout bearing, which then disengages the clutch. It's super simple. We're about to install the transmission to the engine. Before we do, let me warn you about a couple of pending disasters going on here. First of all, one of the things that's considered critical here is that you use a dial indicator to make sure that the center line of the transmission absolutely concentric with the crankshaft inside the engine. Here's the problem. This surface can't be trusted to be absolutely round. So they make a tool that you bolt on there in order to do the dial indicating and find the concentricity. I don't have that tool, so we didn't do it. Hopefully not gonna be a problem. The other thing is they say that this clutch and this trans both really want to be broken in for 500 miles. That's not going to happen either because we're going to the drag strip Friday. Okay, Steve.
I say we just drive it right in there.
There we go.
Maybe I should put this back neutral. It hasn't engaged the
pilot bearing. See, the whole secret here is you don't want to just ramrod stuff together. There's dowels that hold the transmission or locate the transmission to the bell housing, and the holes just have a little bit of powder coating in them. And it's pulling together really nicely. It's not like we've got a bind in the clutch or in the pilot bushing or any of that. It's going together nice and smooth.
So are you ready for the first test fit here, David?
Yep. I'm really curious where that shifter is going to land.
I think it's going to land just fine because it's about 2 inches further back than the Saginaw, but we're moving the engine forward 3/4, so it's going to be 1 1/4 inches back and more in the center line.
Oh man, the precision of Roadkill Garage is just reaching a new high when we're adjusting our shifter position within 500 thou.
I might even fit through the hole that's already cut in the floor.
And in, and okay, it's now ramrodded into the floor. That is a problem, isn't it?
Yeah. Tell me if that gets better or worse.
Worse, okay. Better, and worse. We're at the point where the shifter is blocking our progress with getting the engine in place. So I'm just gonna cut a hole in the floor. You can see that there's already a couple holes here for at least a couple transmissions over the years. Yep, all fixed. Good morning, Wednesday. So Dulcich and I stayed here really late last night, just sort of mind surfing the whole 56 drivetrain situation. What I got going on right now is loose motor mounts completely up here, and we're gonna put in the transmission cross member, and once that trans mount finds its happy home, we'll come up here and tighten down all these mounts and then be able to move on from there. What we're gonna do is bolt the cross member on to the transmission, and once we've got it perfectly located, then we'll make the brackets out here on the sides for the frame to hold it up.
Since we're going to reuse the original transmission crossmember, these frame brackets are going to need a little modification. This ear sat on top of the frame rail, and that set the height, and it needs a different height now. So I'm just going to cut that off because we're just going to weld these directly to the frame at whatever height is necessary.
All right, we have the side mounts for the trans crossmember clamped up against the frame. I'm going to plug weld them or rosette weld them on. I'm not that great at this, so wish me luck. Ah.
Are you having any luck, David?
No, I don't like it. That second one was just awful. It's barely welded on, Steve. You want to weld it?
Okay, I'm tagged in.
They say that perfect is the enemy of good. So we have no enemies because there is no perfection around here. We just booger welded those brackets to the side of the frame to hold the transmission crossmember, but we're happy with it. The next thing that we have to do is get the car back down on the ground, measure up the drive shaft, because we only have a day and a half to get a custom drive shaft. The big deal that's left over is that Dulcich has mind-scienced the clutch master cylinder. So we have to make that happen on fabrication. While he's doing that, I'm just going to be bolting stuff to the rest of the car, trying to make the engine run.
Because this car uses a hydraulic clutch, it also needs a hydraulic master cylinder. Normally this mounts down low right here where the mechanical linkage would come through the firewall. Because it would mount at a steep angle, American Powertrain has this really trick little bracket that's adjustable for angle because there's not much articulation in the push rod. I decided to relocate it high up on the firewall where it's basically going to be in a straight line with the pedal linkage. So I've removed this part and I'm just going to mount the master right here. Okay, that wasn't so bad. I've got the master cylinder mounted on the firewall. Tell there's going to be a little flex. All of the underdash stuff is in place. It lined up perfectly. I've got a straight shot from the pedal right into the master. While Steve's over there messing with that master cylinder, I'm going to try and get the engine all together. So I'm going to be stealing parts off this engine, which may be familiar to you. Do you remember the episode where I had that really cool 1930 Model A coupe, and Steve and I threw together this small block to put in there and went out and did great burnouts? Amazing car. I love the thing. It's becoming a race car with a big block. This engine is back home. The short block is junk. The cylinder heads belong to Steve, and top end and everything else is mine. So I'm going to be stealing the distributor, alternator bracket, and all that's going to end up on the 56. Carburetor time. Man, I am getting a lot of people giving me a lot of flack for putting a single 4-barrel on this thing because when it appeared on Roadkill, it had a tunnel ram. And now it's got a single 4-barrel on a Super Victor intake manifold that still made 500 horsepower. This is a 830 CFM Holley double pumper. You like it, Dulcich? NASCAR.
Yeah, how'd you know?
Well, it's the 830.
Yeah. And now, the pièce de la résistance, the fender well headers. Obligatory for the retro style 55 Chevy. Obviously this thing had what's called under chassis headers on it. These are the more cool, like originated in the 60s type of what people would call gasser headers.
Yeah, but all this black header paint's just gonna burn right off.
I think I got these coated. I don't think they're painted.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I know they should have been white.
You went all out.
Yeah, cool. These, I think, actually will make power because they're so straight right out of the collector. When headers have a big turn right out of the collector, that kills power. We found the sprint car headers make more power, and these are kind of like that. Stay tuned, because you're going to see these headers getting dyno tested in an upcoming episode of Engine Masters. Everyone wants me to make this car a Blasphemy 2. Maybe I should just make gold headers, and they'd call it good enough.
Well, I mean, you don't have a Hemi.
It's a mouse motor. You know why it's called a mouse? What are elephants afraid of?
Oh, a mouse.
And what is an elephant?
A Hemi.
Right.
Ah.
Ding! Ready for the Wednesday late afternoon list?
We need to write down stuff that we can easily forget.
So I already got fuel pump, rod, and plumbing. Let's see, throttle linkage, header gasket, temp line.
Spark plug wires.
Plug wires.
Drive shaft.
Drive shaft. Fix wheel hop. Okay, that's the biggie. That's like, I will circle that one and then add a couple of asterisks. So this isn't that bad. We were starting to panic. My plan is to get the engine running, then move on to the rear suspension. I'm going to make the fuel system work. I stole this fuel pump mounting plate off that other engine over there. I'll be throwing that on, but I'm concerned that my performance fuel pump is not going to clear the frame on this thing. Here's my problem. Try and swing this in, and it hits the frame right there. This part, the inlet, hits the frame. So what I'm going to do is take all these screws out and rotate the inlet and outlet forward, which will actually help with my plumbing anyway. Well, I had to rotate it and use some funky fittings, and it barely fits, but we got there. There's no going back. This is gonna feel like victory. I don't have a lower radiator hose yet, but it's gonna make me feel like the radiator's installed when I put on the upper. Oh, but I can't do it. See, we moved this whole engine 3/4 of an inch forward, and it affected a bunch of stuff, like fan to radiator clearance. You can see that it's gonna have to shorten up this radiator hose quite a bit. Nailed it, first try. Didn't even cut it too short. It's the mark of a professional. The front clip's on, which means we have water in the radiator. It's all hooked up. Now I can finally time this thing. Go. Ready? I'll let you know when it stops advancing. Does it seem to run really bad?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know what's the advance showing.
This is super frustrating. I finally got the thing so that I could time it, I could see the mark and everything, and the timing mark is just jumping everywhere, which is consistent with the fact that the engine runs ratty and terrible. We went all through and checked all the connections and wires and firing order and all this stuff, and ultimately we're gonna blame the distributor, which doesn't surprise me a lot because we took this distributor out of that engine over there that came out of my Model A that always ran like trash, and maybe that's why. I had this MSD distributor sitting around. It's a locked out one, no advance curve in it, but it needs a box. And I didn't have one, so we started rifling around for that, and Steve found an MSD 6A on his dyno. And so he's gonna go scavenge that. I'm gonna install this in the engine, and hopefully we can solve the problem by replacing every part that we could possibly find. So this was locked out. I modified it with an ignition curve, and now I've got the engine at top dead center on number 1, ready to drop this thing in. I will end up wiring that MSD quick and dirty roadkill style butchery just so we can get this thing going because we're way behind schedule right now. How's that for an installation? Roadkill style.
Seems all right. I think the tack is just screwed up.
It has no advance. The springs must be flying out immediately. What's it idling out, or we don't know because, I mean...
The tack is going everywhere from 5,000 to negative.
Let me put my other tack in. I think it's fine right now, but I'm gonna put a different tack in it. That was me grounding out the power in the back of the alternator. Well, we got it running good, and the tack works. That autometer is like steady. It's not all jumping around. It doesn't make the needle go all the way around in circles like the other one did. And once we got it running, we found 2 more problems. First of which is I put a timing curve in that distributor, but it's still acting as if it's locked out. It's like the curve is too fast and it's all the way advanced. It's showing me 35 degrees always, even at idle. So it's almost as if the advance weights are flying out with the thing at idle. So I'm gonna take that apart and put some stiffer springs in it so that we get more of a curve. Other thing is this carburetor does a strange thing I've never seen before, which is it just drips fuel out of the idle transfer slots in the secondaries. And it did this on the dyno, but I went through it and changed all the gaskets and looked for the problem, couldn't find it, thought I'd fixed it, but it's still leaking. So we're gonna have to find a different carburetor for it because I don't know what's going on with that one. So now we've got the whole tune-up on this thing finished. Timing, carburetor, everybody. We're finally ready to move on to that wheel hop problem. Because of our luck, the drive shaft that we got is completely wrong. We've got that sent out for repair. However, there are a few things we noticed about the rear suspension that make it immediately evident why this thing has a terrible wheel hop problem, meaning no traction, tires trying to come off the ground as we launch it. First of all, I'm going to put this tape measure from the center line of the transmission back here to the center line of the rear axle, and you can see that that rear pinion angle, as is compared to the drive shaft, is pointing way too far up. It should be way down like this. So we have a radical problem there. Secondly, I took the shock absorber off, and you can see that I've only got 1.5 inches of down travel on the shock. That means as soon as this thing leaves the drag strip starting line and gets any kind of rise whatsoever, that shock is going to top out and the wheel's going to lift up off the track. The combination of those two things are going to make this thing hideous. The first thing that we're going to do is rip the leaf springs off of the rear axle and see what we can do about altering that pinion angle. Woo! Look, this one's got a booger welded shim on it. Did you see that?
Uh-huh.
You can see that somebody's had this problem in the past. There's a horrible field repair here of like a wedge of metal.
When the job calls for cutting through thick metal, you can toy with the death wheel, but you really want the oxy-acetylene torch. Okay, that's all ready for David to come in and finish the grinding. We are well on our way to fixing this problem. Is it clear? We need to go more in.
If you can get it my way. And safe.
Oh, look at that jack.
Whoa! A warning would have been nice.
I said look at the jack.
Oh, I thought you just let it down.
Fell off the jack, and the jack was on 2 wheels sideways.
Oh, I didn't notice. Well, it's in. Now the process of setting the correct pinion angle. We've got our new spring perches here in between the leaf spring and the axle, clamped down just a little bit, obviously not welded yet. What is pinion angle and why does it matter for this wheel hop problem that we're having? Well, imagine that this is the drive shaft coming out of the transmission down to the rear axle. This is the pinion gear in the rear axle, right where the drive shaft bolts on. So if this is the drive shaft and this is the pinion, and the pinion angle is too high like this, the problem is that as you accelerate, the torque reaction makes that pinion in the rear differential want to climb or go up like this. If your pinion angle is up like this to begin with, and then you give it power and it climbs even more, you get a really gnarly angle like this, and it's more than the U-joint can handle. So what you want to do is actually have the drive shaft and the pinion with the pinion just nose down a little bit like that. The goal being that when you're under power accelerating, it is going to have that torque reaction and pull the pinion up and get them almost straight. So that's your goal. As the pinion climbs, you get, I don't know, 1 or 2 degrees of angle. So that torque reaction is going to help plant the rear end of the car and make it launch. Now I'm going to show you how to find your pinion angle. The easiest way to do it is with one of these digital angle finders with a magnet on the bottom. So most rear axles have a machined flat surface on them which matches the flatness of the pinion inside. So I'm going to put this on that flat surface right there, and then I am going to 0 it. That says 0. Now all I do is move that over to the top of the drive shaft, and it will automatically tell me what my pinion angle is. In this case, 6.4 degrees down. So I've got the pinion down, and the drive shaft's also down just a little bit. Now the unfortunate part is that you really want your U-joints on each end of your drive shaft to have equal and opposite angles so the drive shaft doesn't vibrate. We've got it almost perfectly straight. It's got maybe 0.5 degree in it. And the problem is that the transmission is nose down. I really need to jack up the transmission a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is tack these leaf spring perches in place. Then we're going to have to take this all apart, roll it upside down, final weld it, put it all back together, and then hopefully it works. Pinion angle is set. The last thing in the rear suspension is going to be shock absorbers. Remember I showed you how the stock shocks that were in here only had about 1.5 inches of down travel? I was able to find a QA1 Stalker Star single adjustable race shock that had a little bit more. I think we now have 4 inches total. New engine, new trans, new clutch, new drive shaft, new rear suspension.
What can go wrong? Let's go try it out.
I know. I'm most worried about the clutch, actually.
Yeah, me too. It's moving. Look at all the dust those headers are blowing out. Okay, I think it's pretty good.
Fifth. Sixth.
How's your clutch travel?
I'm getting used to it. It's short.
Yeah. You have to drive like 120 miles an hour to use 6th gear in this.
Yeah.
How is this shifting? Does it seem like you could power shift it if you wanted to?
Yeah, come on.
How do you like your aluminum flywheel?
Oh, I forgot about that.
You like it?
Maybe that's why it doesn't hit hard on the shift. It doesn't have that stored energy.
You know what we have to do, don't you?
What?
We have to see if we have wheel hop.
I know, I was wanting to put a few more engagements on the clutch.
I think you don't need to use the clutch. Just roll into it at low speed.
That's true. That was cool.
Yeah.
It spun them. Did you feel it?
Yeah.
You like jumped up and spun. That felt great.
It was really good. I liked your burnout.
I spun them. No wheel hop. None. We won that one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm feeling better. Woo!
Yeah.
This car is great.
Dude.
Oh, we totally changed the personality of this thing, man. It's exactly the level of violence I was hoping for.
It exceeded my expectations. That 350 rocks, dude.
I know it.
How does a solid roller make you feel so good?
Oh, man, it just makes your day every day.
It's even better when it's in a 56 Chevy.
Our next step is to go to the drag strip. The suspension on the thing, it's not wheel hopping like it was, but the problem is the car is so stiff, it's totally topped out in the back, and it rides like a 3/4 ton truck in the back. The hesitation I have about the drag strip is I don't think it's gonna hook, because it's got no up travel in the front, so no stored energy for weight transfer.
But I think it's going to be ready to rip.
Man, I don't feel right. There's nothing left to do. I feel confident going into day
What?
one at the track.
Freiberger.
It makes no sense.
Listen, if there was anything wrong with this car, you would be morbidly depressed.
It's a fact.
Look at that smile.
Okay. Famoso Raceway, here we come.
Yeah.
I love it when we're back at Auto Club Famoso Raceway, cocked and loaded for success.
Oh, yeah. 6-speed transmission in place, small block Chevy under the hood, 500 horsepower, 56 Tri-5.
Yeah, there's no way to lose. Apologies to my friends at Centerforce and American Powertrain for what I'm about to do to your parts without having broken them in like you told me to. This is gonna be good though. Hopefully it hooks.
You ready to take it down the track?
I am.
All right.
Suit up, helmet up, ready to go.
I hope he doesn't leave the rear end at the starting line.
Okay. Woo! Now I gotta learn to drive this thing.
Okay, so you ran a 1278 at 112. That thing had a huge bog off the line. You need a 5,000 RPM launch to get that thing to go. but 112 is not too bad for a little 350. I think we can do better than that.
Oh, we're going again. We can make this a lot better. Dude, this thing felt like it popped the front end up in seconds.
That's what we're talking about, 1184. There's our 11-second time slip. I knew that thing had an 11 in it. 115 miles an hour. Wow, that ain't too bad for a little 350 in a Tri-5. There you go, bro.
Yeehaw!
There's that 11 seconds we were talking about.
Dude, this thing feels like it picks the front end up when I grab second.
Really?
It was incredible. I can't believe it hooks that much.
Oh, no, this thing's freight train. What did you launch it at?
4. I'm going to try 45.
5,000. Go 5.
Okay, that was a $4,000 launch. Let's see what it does at 5. We broke the rear end.
Well,
apparently $4,000 is the limit of the stock rear axle.
at least it happened right there. Yeah, this thing is a freaking beast.
Beast!
Beast. The COVID 350 is pretty good. I have to hand it to you, Freiberger.
Man,
Yeah.
love it. This thing is amazing. All right, well, we ran 11s with our COVID 350 and the 56 Chevy, broke the rear end, had a lot of fun, got that precious 6-speed in action. And if this thing runs 1150s someday, you will see it on Roadkill Garage. Man, I've never been so happy to break a rear end in my life. Think we can push it?
Yeah.
Or is it going to clunk? That's broken.
Yep.
Man, this track is good. Nice and sticky.
I know.